The brochure has been sitting on my kitchen table for 14 hours. Catherine left it there yesterday afternoon, set down between the sugar bowl and the salt shaker like it was something casual, something she just happened to bring along. Glossy paper. A photograph of 3 gray-haired women laughing in a sunroom that doesn't belong to any of them. The word community in soft cursive at the top. I haven't moved it. I haven't thrown it away. I just keep walking past it the way you walk past something you're not quite ready to look at directly. I poured my coffee this morning and sat down across from it like it was a guest I hadn't invited. Harold's chair. I still call it Harold's chair, even though he hasn't sat in it in 11 years. The wood at the top is darker where his hands used to rest. You can refinish the whole table and that shadow stays. Some marks aren't damage. Some marks are proof. My name is Evelyn Grace. I'm 92 years old, and I'm telling you about this brochure because I know you've seen one too. Maybe yours came in a different color folder. Maybe it arrived through the mail, or your daughter left it casually on the counter the way mine did, or your son emailed you a link to a website with virtual tours and meal plans and floor plans of apartments that all look exactly the same. But the smiling strangers in those photographs are always the same strangers. And the question underneath the smiling is always the same question. Wouldn't you be safer somewhere else? If you're past 70, you've been asked it. If you're past 80, you've been asked it many times. And if you're like me, you've started to feel something underneath the asking that nobody wants to name. So let me name it. What they are really asking is whether you would mind being smaller, whether you would mind your world shrinking down to a single room with a window and a bed and a chair, where everything dangerous has been removed, because everything dangerous is also everything that ever made you feel alive. I'm not saying that to be dramatic. I lived 8 months in a place like that after my hip surgery, when Catherine and Robert decided together that I couldn't manage on my own yet. I came home in March of last year. I have not stopped thinking about those 8 months since, and what I learned there, and what I'm still learning here, in this kitchen at this table, with this stubborn brochure beside me, is what I want to tell you about tonight. Because nobody told me, and I had to find out the hard way. I should say something about Catherine before I go further, because if I don't, you'll think I'm angry at her, and I'm not. Catherine is 68 years old. She is my oldest. She came out of me first, came out screaming, and she has been screaming at the world to be careful with the people she loves ever since. She doesn't bring me brochures because she wants me out of my house. She brings me brochures because she lies awake at 3 a.m, imagining me at the bottom of the stairs. I know this because I did the same thing with my mother. I brought her pamphlets once, in 1987, when she was a little younger than I am now. I sat in her living room with my hands folded and explained to her gently, the way Catherine explains to me, that there was a lovely place in town with a garden and a chaplain who came on Sundays. I told her she'd be safer. I told her she could finally rest. My mother looked at me for a long moment. Then she said very quietly that she would rest when she was dead, and that until that day she would prefer to live in her own kitchen, where she knew where the spoons were. I drove home crying. I thought she was being unreasonable. I thought she didn't understand the risk. It took me 35 years to understand what she was actually saying. She wasn't telling me she didn't trust the place. She was telling me that what looked to me like risk looked to her like the last territory she still owned. The cabinet where she kept the spoons, the window that faced the apple tree, the light switch she could find in the dark because her hand had been finding it for 60 years. She was telling me that a life is not just where you live. A life is everywhere you have already been, layered into the walls of the place where you are. I didn't hear her. I was too young to hear her. I was 55 then, which seemed old to me at the time, and now seems like a child standing in front of a fortress and not understanding why the stones are so heavy. So when I sit at this table now and look at Catherine's brochure, I don't feel angry. I feel something more complicated. I feel grief for both of us, because I know she is doing the same thing I did, and I know nothing I say will make her hear it any sooner than I did. Some lessons only arrive when you are the one standing inside the fortress, and the children at the door look so young. This is the first thing I want you to understand. The people pushing you out of your house love you. That doesn't mean they are right. Love and rightness are not the same thing. The morning Harold died, I made coffee. I don't know why I'm telling you this so soon, but I am. It belongs here. He had been in the hospital for 9 days. I came home that last morning to shower and change clothes before going back. I was standing in this kitchen, in this exact spot, when the phone rang. I knew what the call was before I picked it up. You can feel certain calls coming the way animals feel storms. After I hung up, I stood here for a long time. I don't remember how long. Then I made coffee. Not because I wanted it, because the coffee maker was in the same place it had been for 33 years, and my hands knew what to do even when my mind had stopped being able to think. I poured 2 cups. I caught myself. I poured 1 back. That is the moment I understood what a house is. A house is not a structure. A house is a map of every motion your body has memorized. It's where your hand reaches without looking. It's the 3rd stair that creaks. It's the spot on the kitchen floor where the linoleum is worn down because you stood there making 48 years of dinners. It's the door frame with the pencil marks where my children's height still climb, even though the youngest of those marks is 55 years old now. When they tell you to move at our age, they think they're asking you to change your address. They are not. They are asking you to lose the map. That is the second thing I want you to understand. And I want you to understand it in your bones, not just your head. At 70, at 80, at 90, the home you have lived in is doing something for you that no facility, no apartment, no spare room in your daughter's house can do. It is carrying your memory in its walls. Every time you walk down that hallway, you walk past your own life. You walk past the wallpaper your husband hated and you secretly liked. You walk past the dent in the door frame from the night your son tried to bring a bicycle inside. You walk past the kitchen where you fed people who are no longer here to be fed. That walking is not just walking, it is being someone. When you move, you don't lose the memories. The memories are inside you, but the daily reminding stops. And the daily reminding is the difference between remembering you had a life and feeling you have one still. I learned this in the 8 months I was away. The room they gave me had a beige wall and a window that faced a parking lot. There was a chair I did not choose. There was a bedspread I did not choose. There was a small framed print on the wall of some flowers I did not recognize, and I stared at that print for 8 months and never once felt anything about it. In this house, I have a small watercolor in the hallway that my sister painted in 1968, 6 years before she died. I walk past it every morning, and every morning, for 1 second, I feel my sister. In that beige room, there was nothing to feel anyone through. The walls had held other women before me, women I would never know, women whose families had also been told this was the best place. And when I would lie there at night, I could feel the building forgetting me before I had even left. A place that doesn't remember you cannot hold you up. I came home thinner, not just thinner in my body, though I was. Thinner in some other way I still can't quite name. As if something had been steadily evaporating, and I hadn't noticed because there was no mirror in that life that showed me who I was supposed to be. The first morning I was back in this kitchen, I cried into my coffee for 20 minutes, not from sadness, from the simple shock of recognition. The cabinet was where it had always been. The light came through the window at the same angle it had come through for 43 years. Harold's chair was where I had left it. The house had waited. I will tell you something I have not told anyone, not even Diana, who would weep if she heard it. For about 6 weeks in that rehabilitation place, I stopped wanting to live. I want to be careful how I say that. I was not planning anything. I was not in danger. I was simply quietly, no longer particularly invested in waking up the next morning. I would lie there in the dark and think, if this is what is left, I am ready to be done. And I would close my eyes and feel almost neutral about whether they opened again. Coming home undid that. Within a month of being back here, I wanted to live again. Not because anything in my body had improved. My body is what it is at 92. But because I was Evelyn again. I was Evelyn in Evelyn's kitchen, with Evelyn's spoons, looking out Evelyn's window at the maple tree she planted with Harold in 1982. I tell you this because I want you to understand the stakes. They are not the stakes Catherine thinks they are. Catherine thinks the stakes are, will Mom fall? The real stakes, the ones nobody on the outside of this body can see, are, will Mom still be Mom? And those are not the same question. They are not even close to the same question. Robert called me 3 weeks into my stay at the rehabilitation place. Robert is 65, my middle child, and he lives almost 1,000 miles from here. He calls every Sunday and has called every Sunday for 30 years, which I appreciate. But Robert has always believed that any problem can be solved if you apply enough logic to it. He cannot understand that some problems are not problems. They are conditions of being alive, and the only thing you can do with them is carry them. He called me to tell me he'd been thinking and that maybe I shouldn't go back home. Maybe a smaller apartment near Catherine would be better. He had run the numbers. He had looked at the layout of my house. He had made a list of all the things in my house that were, in his words, hazards. I listened. I let him finish. Then I asked him if he remembered where the cookies were when he was 8 years old. He laughed. He said the cabinet next to the refrigerator, the second shelf, behind the flour. He said it without thinking. I asked him how he knew. He said because he'd opened that cabinet 1,000 times. I said yes. And I said the cabinet is still there, and the cookies are still there, and I am still the woman who put them there. And if I move into an apartment, that cabinet will belong to someone else, and the cookies will be in a different place. And Robert, my 65-year-old phone call who used to be 8, the kitchen, you remember, will exist only in your head, and one day you will not be able to find it there either. There was a long silence on the phone. He said, I hadn't thought of it that way, Mom. I said, I know you hadn't. That's why I'm still here to tell you. I want you to understand something about safety, because they are going to use that word with you, and they are going to use it a lot. Safety is not the absence of risk. Safety is the absence of risks you cannot live with. There is no such thing as a place without danger. The facility has danger. The hospital has danger. Your daughter's spare bedroom has danger. The difference is that in those places, the danger is unfamiliar, and you have no power over it. In your own home, the danger is the danger you have lived with, that you understand, that you have made peace with, and that, importantly, you can do something about. I know where the loose board on my porch is. I have known it for 19 years. I will not be tripping on it. A new floor in a new place I would have to learn from scratch at 92, with eyes that don't see what they used to, and a memory that doesn't catalog new information the way it used to either. When you are young, a new place is an adventure. When you are old, a new place is a test, every day, all day, of whether you can still learn fast enough not to get hurt. They don't tell you that. They show you the brochure with the sunroom. There's a window in my kitchen that I have stood at every morning since 1982. The view has changed. The maple tree Harold and I planted when we first moved in is now taller than the house. There used to be a vegetable garden where the grass is now. The Hendersons across the street are gone. Their grandson lives in that house now with his wife and a baby I haven't met, but I watch from this window when they come outside. That window has watched the whole second half of my life with me. I don't know if you have a window like that. I hope you do. I hope it looks at something that has changed alongside you, because that is one of the strange gifts of staying. The world changes outside your window, and you change inside it, and somehow the two of you keep each other company through all of it. When my mother died, she died in her own bed. I was holding her hand. Her window faced east, and the sun was coming up. She said very softly that the light was the same as it had been the morning she'd married my father in 1949. I don't know if that was true. I don't know if the light in November of 1991 was actually the same as the light in June of 1949. But she believed it, and she died believing it, and I have never stopped being grateful that she got to die in a room where she could believe something like that. That is what I'm trying to protect when I refuse to leave this house. I'm not just protecting my floor plan. I'm protecting the possibility of dying somewhere that knows me. I want to say something now that I have not said out loud to my children. I am afraid of falling. There, I said it. I am 92 years old, and I am afraid of falling, and I am afraid of the long hours I might spend on the floor before someone found me, and I am afraid that one of these days I will go to sleep and not wake up, and the person who finds me will be a neighbor or a meter reader or, God forbid, one of my grandchildren coming by unannounced. I am afraid of all those things. I think about all those things. I am not pretending I don't. But what I have come to understand, and what I want you to understand, is that fear is not a reason to stop living the way you have chosen to live. Fear is a passenger. Fear gets a seat in the car. Fear does not get to drive. If I move out of this house because I am afraid of falling, I will still be afraid. I will be afraid in a different building. I will be afraid surrounded by strangers. I will be afraid in a room that does not know me. The fear does not stay behind. The fear travels with you. Only now you have given up the one thing that was holding you steady against it. You stay home, not because home is safe. You stay home because home is the place where you are still you. If I fall and die in this kitchen, I will fall and die in the kitchen where I taught my daughters to cook and fed my husband for almost a lifetime. If I fall and die in a strange room with a panic button on the wall, I will fall and die as a stranger, in a place that does not remember me, and that to me is the worst death, by far. Diana doesn't understand this. Diana is my youngest, 61 years old, and she carries her feelings the way some people carry an open glass of water. Everything spills. She calls me 3 times a week now, sometimes 4, and sometimes I see her name on the phone and I let it go to the machine because I cannot manage her panic on top of my own. Is that a terrible thing to admit? Maybe. But I am too old to lie. Some days my own daughter is too heavy to lift, and I have to set her down for an afternoon. Diana brings up the same things every call: the stairs, the bathtub, the driveway in winter. She is not wrong about any of it. The stairs are stairs. The bathtub is a bathtub. The driveway in January is exactly what every other driveway in January is. But Diana is not really worried about the stairs. Diana is worried about losing me, and what she does not yet understand, because she is only 61, is that she will lose me whether I live in this house or in a facility. She will lose me whether I die at home or in a hospital. She will lose me at some point in some way, because that is what mothers do to daughters, eventually. And whether I have 2 more years here or 5 more years there, the losing is already on its way, and the only choice in front of me is what kind of life I get to live before it arrives. I want to live the life I built. I don't want to live the careful, supervised, harmless version of it that has been suggested to me from approximately 3 different directions. Last Thanksgiving, my granddaughter Rose came into the kitchen while I was making the gravy. Rose is 8. She is the youngest of my 7 grandchildren. She has a missing front tooth and a habit of asking the questions other people are too polite to ask. She stood there watching me stir, and she said, "Grandma, why does your kitchen smell different than my kitchen?" I said, "I don't know, sweetheart. Why does it smell different?" She thought about it for a long time. She had her serious face on, and then she said, "It smells like more time. It smells like more time." She was 8 years old. She didn't know what she had just said. She went back to the living room with a cookie and forgot all about it. But I stood there with the wooden spoon in my hand, and I cried for a moment very quietly because I had been trying to explain it to myself for years, and an 8-year-old had handed me the answer in 5 words. A home you have lived in for 44 years smells like more time. The hallway has more time in it. The kitchen has more time in it. The bedroom upstairs where Harold and I slept for 43 years has more time in it than any room I have ever been in or will ever be in again. You cannot bottle that. You cannot bring it with you. You cannot reproduce it in a new apartment, no matter how nice the apartment is, no matter how many of your old things they let you bring. The things are not what holds the time. The walls hold the time. The floor holds the time. The light coming through the windows in the afternoon at the angle it has come through for 4 decades holds the time. This is what nobody tells you, and this is what I am telling you now. When you are 70 or 80 or 90, you do not have a lot of time left. That is just the truth. But the time you have left is more time than you have ever had access to before, because you can stand inside it. You can move through your own decades just by walking from the kitchen to the porch. That is not a small thing. That is one of the few real privileges of being old, and they will take it from you if you let them, and they will tell you it's for your own good. It is not for your own good. It is for their peace of mind, which is a different thing. I want to be careful here, because I don't want you to hear me as someone who refuses help. I am not refusing help. I let a young woman named Marcy come in twice a week. She helps me with the laundry and the heavy cleaning and the things my back doesn't want to do anymore. She is 26 and patient, and we have become something like friends. I have a button I wear around my neck that I can press if I fall. I have a doctor I see, and I take the medicines she gives me, and I do the exercises the physical therapist gave me after the hip, even on the days I don't feel like doing them, which is most days. I am not pretending I am 30. I am simply refusing to pretend that I am already gone. There is a difference between accepting help inside your own life and letting other people pack up your life for you. The first one is being practical. The second one is being managed. And by the time you are old enough to need help, you are also old enough to know the difference, even when the people you love are working very hard to blur it. My grandson James came over a few weeks ago. James is 23, just out of college, the kind of young man who still doesn't quite know what to do with his hands when he sits down. He sat at this table in Harold's chair without realizing it, and he asked me, just like that, what I was actually afraid of. Not what his mother thought I should be afraid of. Not what the brochure said I should be afraid of. What I was actually afraid of. I almost cried, because no one had asked me that. I told him I was afraid of being moved before I was ready. I told him I was afraid of waking up one morning in a room I didn't recognize, surrounded by my things in the wrong arrangement, and not being able to tell anyone, in a way that would convince them, that I had not consented to this. I told him I was afraid that the love of my children would become the bureaucracy of my children, and one day a decision would be made about me without me. and by the time I understood what had happened, the house would be sold and the keys would be gone and there would be no way back. He listened. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't tell me I was being paranoid. He didn't tell me his mother only wants what's best for me. He said, "I won't let that happen, Grandma." I don't know if he can keep that promise. He is 23. He doesn't know what life will ask of him yet. But the fact that he made it, and the fact that he understood, even partially, what I was telling him, is one of the reasons I am still able to sleep at night. If you have someone like that in your life, hold on to them. Tell them what you are actually afraid of, not the surface fear that you might fall on the stairs, the deeper fear underneath it, the fear of being moved before you are ready, the fear of losing your own voice in the decision about your own life. Tell someone who can hear it, and if no one in your family can hear it, find someone who can, a friend, a neighbor, a doctor, anyone. Because the people who love you the most are often the people most afraid of losing you, and that fear can make them deaf to what you are saying. It is not their fault. But it is your job to make sure your voice is on record somewhere, in someone's ear who will remember. Sophie called me last Sunday. She is my oldest granddaughter, 25, and she lives in the city now. She doesn't call as often as Diana, but when she calls, she actually listens, and the difference is enormous. She asked me, almost shyly, whether I was lonely. I sat with that question for a moment. People assume an old woman alone in a big house must be lonely. They picture us staring at walls. They picture silence as suffering. I told her the truth. I told her that I am alone, but I am not lonely. I told her there is an enormous difference between the two, and that most people under 60 cannot tell the difference because they have never been allowed to find out. I am alone in the same house where I raised 3 children. I am alone in the same kitchen where Harold sat across from me for 48 years. The aloneness is not empty. The aloneness is full. It is full of everything that happened here. It is the only kind of company I can imagine wanting at this age. In the rehabilitation place, I was never alone. There were nurses every hour. There were other residents in the hallway. There were activities and group meals and bingo on Wednesdays. I have never been lonelier in my life. Loneliness is not about whether other bodies are nearby. Loneliness is about whether you are recognized. And the deepest recognition any of us ever get is from the rooms that have known us the longest. The brochure is still on my table. I will tell you what I am going to do with it. I am going to leave it there until Catherine comes back. I am going to make her a cup of coffee. I am going to sit down with her at this table where her father used to sit, and I am going to tell her gently the same thing my mother told me almost 40 years ago. I will rest when I am dead. Until then, I would prefer to live in my own kitchen, where I know where the spoons are. She will cry. I know she will cry. She is 68 years old, and she still cries the same way she did when she was 4. She will tell me she's just worried. She will tell me she can't sleep at night thinking about me alone here. She will tell me she loves me, and I will believe her, because she does. And I will tell her that I love her too, and that loving someone is not the same as being right about what they need. I will tell her that one day, when she is my age, she will sit at her own kitchen table, and someone she loves will hand her a brochure, and she will remember this conversation, and she will finally understand, not before. She cannot understand before. None of us can. That is the cruelty and the mercy of being human. You only get the lesson when you have lived long enough to need it. So I am writing this down, in a way. I am saying it out loud in this kitchen to whoever can hear it. To you, if you are 75 and your children have started using a certain tone with you. To you, if you are 80 and the brochures have started arriving. To you, If you are 90, like me, and you are tired of explaining yourself to people who think your tiredness is proof that you should leave, stay if you can. Stay if your body allows it. Stay if the walls still hold you up. You do not owe anyone a smaller life than the one you have built. You do not owe anyone the relief of knowing exactly where you are at every hour of the day. You do not owe anyone an early surrender of the rooms that have carried you this far. There will come a time for some of us when staying is genuinely no longer possible. I will not pretend otherwise. The body does what the body does. I may yet have a day when I have to be moved, and if that day comes, I hope I have the grace to recognize it, and I hope I have children gentle enough to let me know without making me feel like a burden. But that day is not today, and it is not tomorrow. And until it arrives on its own, I will not invite it in early just to make other people sleep better. I want to say one more thing before I let you go. If you are watching this and you are the daughter or the son or the worried grandchild, instead of the elder, I am not your enemy. I want you to hear me. The person you love is not a problem to be solved. The person you love is still the person you love, with a mind that is still working and preferences that still matter, and a sense of where her own life should be lived that is still hers to decide. Listen to her, not to what you wish she would say, to what she is actually saying. Ask her what she is afraid of. The real fear, not the one you have assumed. And when she tells you she wants to stay in her own house, do not hear it as stubbornness. Do not hear it as denial. Hear it as the last great act of authorship she has left over her own life. The right to choose the room she lives in. The right to choose, if she is lucky, the room she dies in. That is not a small thing to ask for. That is the only thing left at the end. Give it to her. It is almost dark now. The light at this window has shifted the way it always shifts in October, and I have been talking for a long time. I should get up and put something together for dinner, though at my age dinner is often just toast and an egg, and I have stopped apologizing for it. I will sit here a little longer. I will look at the brochure one more time. I will not throw it away yet. I will let Catherine come back and find it where she left it, untouched, because untouched is its own kind of answer. Then I will get up. I will walk past the doorframe where my children's heights are still climbing. I will turn on the lamp in the hallway, the same lamp I have turned on at this hour for 44 years, and my hand will find the switch without looking, because my hand has been finding that switch since before some of my grandchildren were born. That is what I am protecting, not a house, a hand that knows where the switch is. My name is Evelyn Grace. I am 92 years old. I am still here. I am still home. And if anything I have said tonight helps even one of you, anywhere, to stay one more month or one more year or one more decade in the place that knows you, then this evening was not just an evening. It was an inheritance, passed quietly across a kitchen table from someone who waited a long time to be allowed to speak. Good night.